You're listening to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. In this episode, we'll be tuning into an education session for publishers that was presented at Children's Institute 2024 in New Orleans. Booksellers present on children's events in the 2020s.
I'm super excited by this session. It's an opportunity for us to be able to talk to you as publishers about the state of the world in terms of school visits, author events, and other things that we do with you year-round. My name is Bryn Lopez. I am the manager of Children's Book World in Los Angeles. I have been selling books for 30 plus years, and I am really, it's like I couldn't ask for a better job. It is my favorite job, and I'm so lucky to be able to have it. And I'm going to go down the line. We'll start with Lupe. You can introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Lupe Penn. I am with Bookmarks in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I serve as a youth and schools manager, so everything that has to do with youth and schools is my focus.
Hi everyone, I'm Naeem Cano from Seminary Co-op Bookstores in Chicago. I am one of the managers there, and we have a very robust events calendar, over 300 events a year. About 55 of those are children's events.
Hi everyone, my name is Angie. I am the events and marketing manager at BBGB in Richmond, Virginia, and we're a new children's specialty bookstore, and school author visits are the cornerstone of our business model and a program that I'm super grateful to have helped develop.
So we have a big agenda and lots of things that we want to be able to go through, but I'd like to start by getting a show of hands from all of you in terms of where you're coming from. And we want to start with raising your hand if you consider yourself to be a small or an indie publisher. Great. And how about if you consider yourself to be a medium-sized publisher? No, it's good that we've got a diversity of different publishers here. And how about raise your hand if you're part of the big five? Great. And there's a few of you here. I wish there were more, but that's but it's good to have everyone here. So we're here to talk about the post-pandemic realities. We all are dealing with it. You're dealing with it from a publisher perspective. For those of you who are here from bookstores, we're dealing with it from a bookstore perspective as well. It's a decrease in early and middle grade readers. There's been a slide in the reading abilities and the reading preparation for young kids, an increase in electronic usage, which came directly from utilizing those types of materials during the pandemic. And even the ability to be able to go into a bookstore or know about bookstores are part of that. And now we're coming back from that, and there are other aspects like school loan repayments, pandemic benefits running out that are affecting the ability to be able to have strong events, an increase in touring authors, decreased attendance for in-person events, decreased virtual participation, an increased price of books, and regular requests for off-site venues. All of these are things we want to talk about, but each of us want to talk about our own reality in our bookstore in terms of what's going on with school visits for ourselves and the challenges that we face. And I'm going to start down at the end with Angie.
So thank you. Absolutely, the pandemic slide has definitely taken its toll on students in schools, but I also want to not forget about the adults. So teachers and schools are, just like their kids' schedules, they are overbooked and saturated, and I would even argue congested, and so oftentimes author events and even school visits can go on the back burner. And so something that I think is more crucial than ever is that myself and my booksellers and publicists and authors are considering who their audience is at every single stage of the events process and how that shifts during different stages of the events process. So that can be parents and teachers in schools, especially during the promotional and lead up to the event. Obviously, the kids are the stars of the show, and during the actual presentation, it's crucial that their engagement and attention is prioritized, and that can be a huge, huge challenge, especially now. But I would say kind of coming back to understanding who the audience is something that we've been trying to navigate and that we're trying to encourage all of our events partners to navigate as well.
On our end, we've entirely eliminated our virtual events calendar because it's just not feasible. It requires a lot of extra bandwidth that we just don't necessarily have. We're still working to get our event attendance back to pre-pandemic levels, which I'm sure you all know. And in order to get to that point, a lot of these events require continued need for partnerships, and partnerships require a lot of work on our end on sourcing them. We've been around for over 60 years. We have a lot of those already in place, but that's not sustainable for a lot of bookstores, especially newer bookstores that are coming around, which, we want to see them succeed. So the need for making that sustainability happen for all bookstores is really crucial. So excited to talk about how we can, talk about partnerships with you all instead.
For us in Winston-Salem, we do about 20 to 30 events a year for children and teens, and then 60 to 70 school visits. Definitely a challenge. Events can be hit or miss depending on time of day, time of year. We've had to really play with, we're doing an after-school event, an evening event, a weekend event, and just being flexible. And schools, like we all know, are facing so many challenges. So we have 86 schools in our school system. Every one of them function completely different than the other. So what might have worked for one school visit will definitely not work for another. So the communication and the collaboration is the common theme here. It's just we're working together to serve the schools, and knowing that that's not always going to look the same.
For us, so I've been, doing events for so long that I remember what it was like. How many of you have actually been doing this? Doing publicist work for events pre-COVID? Raise your hand. So some of you have, but some of you have not. So it's a completely different experience of planning events now than what it was before. And I only feel, I don't know how any of the rest of you feel, but I only feel like this is the first year that has felt even close to being what it was before, where I actually feel like we're coming back through in a great way. But there are still challenges that we actually have. Now, I'm a firm believer in utilizing virtual along with actual school visits, because if I'm getting an author, and it's a really great author and a really great book, I'm going to have the ability to take them to 2, maybe 3 schools, where I might have 15 schools that are actually interested in hearing what that author has to say, and I can't take them to the other places. So if I can actually do a virtual in conjunction with the 3 visits, then those schools know that they'll be, if they are successful virtual visits, that they'll be on my list for the next time for when we actually have another author in person. So you build anticipation for what it's actually going to be. The other thing is those virtual visits actually live on our YouTube page, on our website. And so that actually gives you, your book is being publicized to everybody, and we're getting sales for those books from all over the country after it, because that talk is there for people who are searching for that particular author. So it's really important to be able to have that support when we want to do something like that. I'm not going to have them read the book if it's a picture book or something else like that, but I want the ability to be able to keep that on my page so that they're able to continue to be able to go back. And I don't mean, they're not virtuals where we're showing an author's particular program that their PowerPoint or something where, they don't want to have everybody see that necessarily before a visit. And then the other thing for me that's a real challenge are the dates, the pub dates. Publishers take their greatest books and they publish them on September 3rd. It's ridiculous. You're all publishing on September 3rd, and that may be a great date for you, but you cannot expect us to have any school visits on September 3rd. It's not realistic. In fact, the closest time that we have schools ready for author visits is the 3rd week in September. They've got testing. The teachers are already scrambling to be able to get themselves together for the new year, figuring out who their students are. They do not have the ability to do a school visit on September 3rd. And you're giving us some of the best school visits possible. And I'm scrambling every single time to be able to make it happen, and I'm just trying to manage expectations. So, okay, those are some of the challenges. Does anyone, you know what, we don't have to go through all of this. Does anyone have any comments about anything that we were actually just saying? Great.
Well, I'm curious, you pay Naeem and Angie, like, how is the day different for you guys being in different parts of the country?
I mean, on our end, it's similar days as well. We start up a little bit earlier. The pandemic has also shifted days. A lot of our schools are now starting a lot sooner. And I think I said eliminated virtual events. Brain still does a ton. It varies so much city to city, but it also varies from the suburbs of Chicago to Chicago itself. We have schools that start early August, so maybe they can handle that September 3rd publishing date, but the Chicago public school system cannot. So it just really varies.
So consider the market.
100%.
Yeah.
And for us, it's different. This upcoming school year is the first time we're starting in the second week of August. But for Bookmark, September is our big festival, so we host about 50 authors for a weekend, and a third of that is children. So we do children's authors. So we do 30 school visits in one day at the end of September. So that works out really well for us.
Well, end of September is great.
Yeah.
I have no problem with end of September. It's just Labor Day weekend.
Yeah. I usually don't do anything else in September. I've said yes to a couple of things if I know I can make it work, but it is a challenge earlier in September.
The other thing probably is also not just that beginning part, but also to take the time to Google the spring break calendars for the place that you're actually wanting to be able to send somebody to. If you're giving it to us during spring break, or when Passover is for us, we have a lot of Jewish schools that we actually work with. So if you're sending us a great author, but it's happening during Passover week, they're all off, and we can't do that. So those are really important things to have that information before you decide to send to a specific region or store. Yeah. And someone else was.
I was going to ask about the other end, like how late in the year I was going to ask about the other end, how late in the year usually works for you.
We just did one on May 29th, and that was about as close as I would get to the. We did absolutely nothing in June. Like June is done. So.
I just want to add that, so for BBGB, our school network has a range of all different kinds of schools, and so there's really not a one size fits all as it relates to when the most ideal start date for touring and booking visits would be. But that's why exactly I think somebody had mentioned getting to know who your market is, not even smaller than that, who the bookstore is, and so being transparent about that bookstore's exact calendar and who their network is, I would say, is something that BBGB has tried to instigate from the very beginning, and just sending over calendars with sort of all of these different first dates.
I'm curious, how many of you actually keep informational records of different bookstores and what works for them or doesn't work for them? I mean, raise your hand if you do. Yeah. Publicists will do, yeah.
I'm sure that we have a list. Do you enter any of this information on the Edelweiss grids or that kind of thing?
I think we do, but it would be great if the publishers already had it, so that there was like a database that publishers had that said, this store, this is the things that they have. The most successful events with this store will happen during this, because obviously we're operating from different perspectives. So if you already had that, that would save you a lot of time and energy as well to make sure every event is successful. Yes?
I feel like taking that idea one step further, if there was a way, similar to Edelweiss grids, where you sort of picture yourself, having your school event, and that was somewhere maybe the ABA can host, that publishers can see. Sorry, I'm talking to the mic. Yeah. If
publishers would be able to kind of access it and it's all in one place. And then, because otherwise we're all just keeping disparate records,
Yeah.
and especially if like the event contact changes, that's our biggest challenge to keep our database up to date, is that the event contact changes, and then if we lose that person's email and we don't get to reconnect with them, then that chance to continue that relationship gets lost. So that might be cool if the ABA was interested.
Yeah, that's exactly right, because not only do we change, but you guys change all the time.
And again, I think it's a lot about transparency, communication, and collaboration. It comes down to.
That is real. Those are some really good. I'm feeling really, really good about this, and I think that there's a way to be able to make that work in conjunction with the ABA or Edelweiss. That's great. Already a solution has come. That's awesome.
Hi, I'm Stacy from Fabled Films Press, and I'm a small independent. And our authors do a lot of work with schools, and they may set the visits up by themselves, and they might go to, I don't know, XYZ in Los Angeles, like, I don't know, whatever the school is. And then what happens is we would love to be able to sell books at those events, but we recognize the fact that, like, you don't necessarily have the people power to go to 100 school events. It doesn't matter when it is. So my question is, how can we all sell more books together? Is there a way to do a virtual bookstore where the school can buy? I saw sort of on the schedule, it looks like that might be something on the agenda where you could create almost like a mini store that we could send the link to the school, so that way you don't have to send a person. I don't know, I'd just be curious, like, if I get a school from an author, like, how can we all make more money if there's an independent bookstore in the area and not send the sales to he who shall not be named?
I definitely have something to say, but how do you deal with local authors who want to do school visits in your individual stores?
So alongside leveraging publicity tours, BBGB, of course, we're always going to be available as booksellers for any local author who are setting up school visits on their own, or they're coming to us via their publicist if they have one. And we don't do any paperwork, right? So that's a lie. The only paperwork we do have is a flyer that goes home talking all about building the excitement for the upcoming visit, and then there's a QR code and a link that leads to an ordering page on our website that we build specifically for that author visit. And we see the order coming in, we know exactly where it's going to be, where this book is going to go, and then we'll, behind the scenes, do the coordination as it relates to getting the book signed and delivered. But we just use an ordering page, and at all parts of promotion are directing families to that ordering page.
We do the same thing. We create a landing page for local author visits as well.
We also use QR codes when we cannot staff events.
So we have a pretty tight system that works for us really well. We have a lot of local authors, and actually those types of visits have been some of our most successful, because I've created a landing page for them for personalized books, just generally personalized books, that also offers, if teachers are interested in a school visit, they can go to this link. The link actually gives me information about the school, but it actually also goes to the author so that they can actually set up. I don't set up an author's visits because we don't have the time or the bandwidth to do that. And then that ordering page can be altered. I have another page that'll be for them when they actually go to a school. And it will have the school listed, it'll have they're coming to your school, visiting this. The most important thing, particularly for small presses, if that book is not available in Ingram distribution, it's not going to show up on our page. It's a lot of extra work to have to create it. We don't have easy access to be able to get the book. We have to have access with a wholesale discount to be able to get the book and be able to sell it at a school event. As long as that happens, we're good to go.
So what if my author goes to fill in the blank, no offense to anyone in South Dakota, and I can't find a local bookstore?
We still do that. We would still do it because you know what? I can send a box of books via media mail for $30. And I would just gather it all together and I would just deal with I've done it. We do it because we get a lot of places like that because they would never get a particular author to be able to go there, or the authors call me and say, this person wants to have an event in Florida or South Dakota or Iowa. I'm like, not that, and actually what I normally do is help them in that process, but then I will suggest to them the bookstores that I know that are ABA associated that they may not have known about, so that for the future they can actually work with them and support their local bookstores as well. Because sometimes they don't, they're just not aware that there's another bookstore in that area.
Is
Yeah.
there a list of stores that do that? Because again, talking about the list to set up an event, I mean, we do 50 events a year, and sometimes I can only get 10 to 12 stores to do what you guys are obviously doing in a very systematic manner. Is there an ABA list of stores that do orders the way we're describing that?
I don't know if we want to necessarily be on a list. I'll be honest with you. We already turned down 60, 70%. I don't know about you guys, but
Well, I think that that's part of the thing is there's a lot of us that are doing it, but a lot of us whose bandwidth is at capacity.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how we can bring in other stores to fulfill the need here. And one of the biggest things is get a proper timeline. I want to do all of your fun events, but I don't want to do your fun events when it's 2 weeks before the date that you're requesting, regardless of who it is, because it just makes it really hard. When we have enough time in advance, there's so many stores that are going to be willing to take on these projects because anyone can make a QR code and create a landing page for the most part on their website. So I think it's about just like that transparency, that communication well in advance to allow us to support the needs of the authors.
yes.
I think just on this as well, so we do all of those things as well. We're very fortunate. We have, in the Boston area, we have a lot of people come through, a lot of school visits, and that's what I do, and that's great. We're really fortunate. One thing that I think would be really helpful, is it's not always clear when we as the store will be responsible for the transportation and finding the hotel and things like that, versus, no, it's all good, just tell us what schools to go to. I mean, we try to meet up with the authors and illustrators whenever we can at the schools where we go. We have those relationships, we want to maintain them. But yeah, sometimes it will come down to the last minute of like, who's picking them up from the airport and how are they getting to the third school? Which we're happy to do, but again, limited, right?
Yeah, you can see number 4 on this list is probably the most important of all, which is transparency and managing expectations. And that transparency is really important. You should never be afraid, not that you are afraid, but you should never be concerned about saying exactly what you want and what you need to be able to create the event. And I'll be honest, every single publicist that I've actually worked with has appreciated that honesty and that transparency, because that makes a successful event for them as well. Am I right about, yeah, you want it to be, everyone to be honest about what the expectation. There have been times where I've had like a really great, in fact, just recently, a really great opportunity for something. And I just said, I just am thinking about it. I had a nightmare in the middle of the night, and then I woke up and I was like, this is not happening, we're not doing it. There's no way that we're gonna be able to pull it off, and they were understanding about that, so.
I would say the logistical itinerary details that need to be checked off, publicist and I have a very good, before I even start booking schools, just a few days into accepting the event offer, we like to kind of hash out as much as we can who's going to be driving, just the nitty-gritty logistics, anything sort of tech-related. I would say also I wanted to add for virtual events as well, we like to have a checklist because as comparatively easier virtual events are to in-person in terms of logistical setup. We've had many experiences where an event that takes a few months or so of planning will just kind of fail due to the author not being able to share their screen because there was some firewall or the setting wasn't turned on, and so it's devastating for the author and for all of the event partners, and so and those are the kinds of things that can be avoided from the get-go, and so I always like to make sure that all of our events partners are on the same page as it relates to the nitty-gritty, ticky-tacky stuff is what my boss likes to call it.
Yes.
I wanted to ask a question about something that came up a few minutes ago when you were all talking about the fact that when you are selling books for school visits, you're doing so primarily through your websites. Is that correct?
Yes.
So I'm getting back into the events game after having left a bookstore just before the pandemic. And in our market, what we found was that overwhelmingly we sold an incredibly larger amount of books through a paper order form. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, is this a significant post-pandemic change, or were you selling primarily online before the pandemic as well, and this is a difference of markets rather than pre and post?
We used to do the paper form,
okay.
And it was a lot of work.
Absolutely.
A lot of mistakes because you're
Yep.
tracking down people because they wrote the wrong number on the check, or they didn't sign the check, or they didn't do this.
Yep.
Not the right amount of cash, and we were just like, we're done, we're through. Everything is actually done on the actual website. And it's actually, there's an ease to that. We do make a physical flyer that has the QR code, as everybody's mentioned, that they can take home that links back to the site. We also work with the teachers. The teachers have the option of the school buying a specific amount of books if they want to bring them to the actual classroom and sell them for those, students or families that are unable to use the credit card for that particular purpose. I just want to talk about our setup for our school visits. So, for example, those smaller local authors, I set up the page, the orders come in. I really try to get the schools to actually advertise a few weeks ahead because some parents are really good about doing it right away, and others, they wait until the last minute. But the problem with that is if parents wait until the last minute, we're not going to order book stock until I know we've got those orders. I mean, I'm not going to order 40 books if I don't know that I've actually got the sales for it. And so I try to push it as much as possible. The author comes to me, picks up all of the books. They're completely bagged. They have the parent's name who ordered it, the number. It actually has the school name, the student name, and the teacher's name. This is the most important thing for us. Every single order is signed by the author either at their home or somewhere in the school. They're never signed with the students.
Sure.
Okay, and there's a reason for that. When you have a situation where an author is signing with the students, the kids who have access to funds to be able to purchase a book have a wonderful time. And there's the trauma of kids who do not have the ability or the access to be able to purchase books. And that's an internalized trauma that they do not talk about. And it's happening every single time you have an event where you allow every single person to be able to sign at that event. It's just not right. And so we've completely stopped that. They have to be signed completely separately so that the author can have the same experience with all the students. The students who were able to purchase books are able to get those books, but nobody has that heartbreak of not being able to afford a book or their parent didn't remember to get the book or whatever it is. How do you guys feel about that?
So for us, it's a little bit different. We use a hybrid form. So it's a order form that's a physical paper form, and the parents have the option of sending in cash or check or using the QR code to order online. And we tried one or the other, and we have never been as successful as we are now with the hybrid because it's all about access and equity, and sometimes those QR codes, everybody doesn't have access to be able to access the website or have a credit card. So we do the hybrid, and what I do is I created a Google Doc where as the librarian is getting order forms, she's entering them in. And so I'm keeping track of how many orders are coming in, and then I give them a deadline so that I know I can order books. If I start to get an influx of orders, we can order more. And the deadline allows for me to deliver the books ahead of time. So I deliver the books to the school about a week early, and they're sealed. So when I show up with an author, I'm not hauling 200 books. And then we, as part of our itinerary, we tell the librarian we need a space for the author to sign before the visit. And so they'll sign, and then they'll all be sorted, like name, age, grade, or teacher. And the librarian's responsible for distributing those. We're also a little different where we are nonprofit, so I have a budget for donations. So some schools and some visits that we go to, every kid that goes to a visit gets a copy of the book. Or even if it's not every kid, every time we do a school visit, the library gets 5 copies. Because regardless of where these schools are, even if they're in an affluent neighborhood, it doesn't equal to that librarian has the budget. The principals could say, hey, you're not getting any money for books this year. So we want to make sure that every visit that we have, that librarian has copies of the book for the kids to check out. And they've seen that after a visit, the increase in circulation of that title goes up. It goes up. So we're a little bit more.
I want to ask you about one specific aspect. So then what I really love is that the teacher is actually putting in all that information. So if the teacher actually, it's their responsibility to look at the check and count the cash and make sure they've got the right amount because they can talk to the parent directly. We can't. That's really
and then
great.
I just pick up an envelope. And so I'm the online forms, I sort them and make sure that I bring everything. And then when I drop in the order forms, the paper forms, she just seals it in an envelope and I take it and then I'll sort it out later. And we also have schools where they're like, hey, I want to order 50. We'll sell them on our end, so we'll just invoice the school. So it's just a little bit of everything.
In our forms, we've also done a portion where parents can donate a copy or two so that the school can then distribute those as necessary. The other thing that we've done is delayed delivery. So if the school event is on a Tuesday, they'll get their books Wednesday, just to, again, that access point. Sometimes at the end of the day, the same day of the event, everyone's really excited, but it is really heartbreaking for the students that aren't able to get a copy. And that's something that, again, we have a lot of partnerships that we're able to kind of provide some donated copies, but it's one of those things that we'd love publisher support with as well.
I just want to say I love hearing how we all have, little bits and pieces of pretty much like the same strategy. And I would say, Bren, we're on opposite sides of the country, but our strategy is pretty much identical to what you guys do in terms of delivery and pre-signing Lupe and things like that. And it sounds like a well-oiled system. So,
when talking about these, some of them are independent authors, but there's another part of it because these are actually big. Sometimes they're very big authors who are local to your area. We're doing personalized books for them all year round, and so they'll be on their actual. So, for instance, for us. Catherine Applegate makes sure that we're her place for personalized books. Sarah Milanowski, they'll put it on their website. We need you to link to us on your page, publisher's page. It should link to an indie bookstore that handles that author's books, and that should be first. That should be first before Amazon, before any other place. It should be the first place that you support is an indie bookstore, particularly if that author has chosen to be able to have all of their personalized. They're not getting personalized books through some of these other places. They're getting them through an indie bookstore. They're also not getting the special care that an indie bookstore is giving to communicate one-on-one in the comment section, taking care of them, suggesting other books that they might like, helping them with other events that are going to be related to that you're planning with us as well. So I think it's really, really important that you support us with those links. And it's not great for everybody who uses Bookshop, but we're an indie bookstore who's doing our own thing as well. And so it's really important that we get that same level of support.
I just want to add also getting authors, and I know authors and illustrators on tour are exhausted, right? We're trying to take the best care of them as we can while we have them. But it's so important for the time that they have with us, for the partnership to be celebrated. And I can't tell you how many times, either out of forgetfulness or being tired, that during a visit or an event, an author and an attendee will ask, "Where can I get your book?" And the author just says, "Well, I am at Barnes & Noble, I'm at Amazon, I'm at Target." And, we're all the entire bookstore sitting in the back row. And so no fault really to any of these creators. Again, I understand events are stressful, but I would say making clear from the get-go that the author understands who their audience is.
Let's talk about event size and outside venue requirements, which just get bigger and bigger and bigger as we keep going on. Does anyone want to address that?
It's really expensive to do off-site events. Just so you all know, outside venue requirements, one, we have to pay for the space. Two, oftentimes they ask for a cut. That's, margins are already really small. When you ask for that more, that's an extra layer. Also, oftentimes we can't fill a space. I know there's an increase and it will come up again later, but of celebrity authors will get asked for a 450 venue capacity, and then it has to turn into an in-store event because we did not sell the expected tickets. So that's just something to consider. If the need is really there, if the market is there, some spaces for sure might have the demand. In Chicago, I have yet to see that happen. But I've had really great events in store that are phenomenal when you are packing a bookstore to the absolute brim and are selling 150 copies. That's a great Tuesday night.
I think for us, it's really about defining what does successful mean to everybody. Going back to school visits, I think when we have successful visits, when available, we get prep material, or here's an educator guide, or things that we can prep the school with, rather than an author's coming, here's your graphic, and then the kids have no idea what's going on. And then for events, we've had to be very flexible. Our goal and mission is to ignite the love of reading, and just celebrating that. And sometimes it means, instead of filling up a venue for a seated conversation for middle grade readers, it is a floating meet and greet where the author is there, they're signing, and then we have activities, and the families can come in and out as they can. And we've had so much more success with that. Well, they'll get a ticket, but it's not the pressure of I have to get there at this time. I need to keep my 10-year-old seated and then go stand in line to get the book signed. So it's about the experience for everybody, making sure that we are not stretching ourselves more than what we're capable of, that we're not nervous about, oh my gosh, did we sell the right amount of books or tickets, which is the goal for everybody, but also that these readers want to come back, that this event and this experience is positive, so that the next time there's an event announcement, they're like, oh, I had so much fun the last time, or I heard from my friend, my family, my teacher, that they had a great time at this event, and then they want to come back. And just being innovative and being open to those ideas that things don't look the way they used to. I came into this industry post-pandemic, but even in that time, things have changed. And so just being flexible and knowing we're all on the same team.
Yeah, speaking on being able to fill in a venue and having to compete with parents' time, right? To even make it out to an event for their kid. And this is something that the staff at BBGB and I talk about all the time, but I would say writing for kids is hard, but putting on kids events and executing successful ones, I would argue, is more difficult than for adults, because you have two, if not three, completely different demographics with often competing interests and dynamics that you're trying to get to be on the same page in your audience. And so Lupe's floating events have actually been something that BBGB has started to try and adopt more of, instead of a 45-minute sit-down event with 10-year-olds trying to sit still. for 30 of those minutes and then come up with questions afterwards. The flexibility for families to come in and out as they please and interact with the author and do other activities. It's also been successful with us.
You know, I understand from the publisher's perspective as well that you have authors whose eyes are bigger than their stomach. Okay? They see Jeff Kinney and they see Dave Pilkey and they're like, I want that. That's what I want. And those demands are happening to you, and we need you to be as frank to them as we are to you. It doesn't work. And I will tell you, you all know this, there is nothing to compare to a author store talk visit in a bookstore than a huge high school auditorium. It's just not even a comparison. I mean, people come in and they buy more books because they're actually inside a store. That is the experience that you actually want to have. That's the experience that we had forever before, prior to 2020. That is the experience that we had. That's what we need to get back to. Not into these outside events where we're not actually, that is of no benefit to us to be outside. Nothing. It is maybe benefit for the author's ego, but it is not a benefit to us to be outside of our actual store where we would actually, because half the time we do events, we're selling other books to be able to fund the event that we're actually doing. So if we don't have that, then it's not as successful. I don't consider that a successful event if we're losing money.
See? No.
That's it. Yes.
So I own Talking Animals books in Grapevine, Texas, which we're adjacent to DFW Airport, and we are in a highly banned books. So our librarians have not been able to order any new books just for their own in years. Do you have any strategies? Because we have a small store, our occupancy is about 55. So we do a lot of offsite events, and we just did an adult author where we sold 300. It was amazing. And so we're having these talks with the publishers saying the demand is here, but we're really scared about getting into the school market because in Texas, they're also working on legislation to hold us legally responsible for selling a book that a parent could take issue with. So we know the demand is there. We have a big activist counterculture pushing back, and we've never had any incidents with people being ugly with us or our safety being challenged. But we would love to work with our local schools because we know what's happening inside. We know the teachers are frustrated. We know their hands are tied. And going to the teachers is honestly pointless. They can't do anything. And so we have a school board that's watching us, all of us like hawks. But we have a great relationship with the library. Would you just say stick with where we're safe, or should we even bother trying to get into the schools?
Do you have any issues in North Carolina?
It depends on school or school. Mm-hmm. We offer the visits. And even when we do field trips to bookmarks where the kids get to shop, and we make sure that the schools know when they're doing the permission slips that they tell them that these are kids' choice is the most important thing, because they're not going to read something. They're going to read something that they chose for themselves more likely than if something that was handed to them, and so that nothing is going to be pushed on them. But if they pick it up, we're not going to discourage them. And so some schools are like, hey, we're not going to be able to do this visit, and I have 20 more schools waiting. So it just depends. You're going to have some schools that are like advocates for what you do, and you're going to have some schools that are like, I don't want to even bother. I love a challenge. I love it. I can share one story. We had an author visit. I have no idea why they had a problem with, well, I do, but. I was actually on maternity leave. I really wish I had witnessed this on my own. But we had a festival author. We were donating free copies of the book to every sixth grader and a drawing pad and color pencils, because it was author illustrator. And the school said no. And now it's on the Battle of the Books list, so they have to read it anyway. And I was like, yes! So I kindly offered to donate copies to the library. So yeah.
I'm doing a panel on Wednesday that is about advocacy and activism within bookstores. And what's going to be great about that is that there's actually a diversity of booksellers from different places to talk about how it's very easy for me to say that in California, but it is not necessarily the same thing in Tennessee. And so you'll hear different perspectives on that. I will say, this is where a virtual hybrid actually works really well for a situation like that. So we make our virtuals accessible to anybody who wants to be able to use them. But an idea would be to actually do a virtual with the author, but then that's the hybrid that can be used inside the schools or for parents at home. But then you actually have a teacher event at your store where the teachers can actually come in, meet the author, hear about how it can be used inside their classroom. They can then use the author talk in conjunction with that as a teaching tool, and the teachers have the experience of meeting the author in person, so they're really getting a lot out of that. Okay. We just got the halfway mark, so thank you for it's flying by. Pre-sale expectations to support access. I know we each have individual things about that. I want to just talk about one of them, and that is, I would love if the publicists at all the different publishers, all that I ask for is for the author to actually give us a 30-second max reel that says, I'm coming to your school soon. That's it. But that you have it created and then you send it to us to be able to utilize. Reels are everything now. Whether we like it or not, they're everywhere. And that is how people see things. And if we have a reel that's 15, 30 seconds long that says the author is coming, I don't need them to say our name. You can use the same reel for every event that you actually do. But if you have it made and it goes to us, we can use it. We can use it again for other future events, whatever it may be. But that's really powerful to be able to send to a teacher that can use it in their email newsletter, whatever it may be, to support the event that we have coming up.
And to Bren's point, these efforts for personal connection that the author makes, they absolutely do not go unnoticed by parents. And in fact, we sell more books if there is a personal connection that the author puts in effort to make. And even, I would say, in that reel, because this is the promotional period and the audience is the parents, right? Having the author, the illustrator, directly address them, saying, I am so excited to come to your school. This was the book that got me into reading. Like, I hope that my visit and my book can do the same for your kid. Mm-hmm. It makes the world of a difference.
Huge difference. I mean, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, also, social media, if they could tag the stores that they'll be visiting, and on their website where they list out their tour dates, include the store that will be sponsoring, that will be book selling at that event, and linking to that specific page goes a really long way. I know oftentimes it's like a link tree that goes again to he who should not be named, and that's not always the best.
I want to shout out my friend Lisa Yee, who is the queen of social media for middle grade fiction. She posts about every school she's going to. She posts about every event that there's some of them who are just, Matt Del Pena is really great about showcasing where he's been. I saw Catherine Applegate doing great things as she was touring. Some authors are really good at it. Some need more support from publicists to be able to have that happen. But it makes such a big difference to have that connection for people in advance. What are your expectations from us before the event that you're not seeing necessarily, or that you'd like to see more of? And I know people have told me before, so don't be shy to say it now. Any publishers?
I'll say something.
Yes, thank you.
I appreciate you mentioning that authors' eyes are bigger than their stomachs sometimes, because it is a delicate dance, and that author care thing is tricky. Sometimes, the sales team and the publicists, it's not on us, it's on the editors to, bring them in. So I would just say, keep sharing all of this, keep pushing back and sharing, we can't do we're not going to fill it, but we can fill the store, and we've had so much success. I would say to keep sharing your feedback on how the events go afterwards. Like, maybe this author wasn't so good at an in-person event, so we know for the future. And if you don't want to say it to the publicist, say it to your rep, say it to me, because that will really help us inform and manage our expectations in the future. But I just want to say I hear you. I hear you. And a lot of the times we are also beating your same drum, but we get an author who's like, off-site events, for middle grade, like you said, let's pack an auditorium, celebrity style, But anyway, thank you.
Yeah. I realized a point that we didn't talk about, but we had talked about in our update, which is about when an actual school visit actually takes place. So frequently, you want the school visit to take place for a new hardcover book on the day that it actually came out, or within a day after that, but usually within the first week of it. That is probably not going to be your most successful event. For you as a publisher, if you want a lot of sales, that's probably not going to be the most successful time to actually have an event for a new hardcover book. Nobody's read it. If you are a generous publisher who's given us galleys to be able to get to the teacher in advance, that's a great thing. But if we actually waited 2.5, 3 weeks after the book was released, and we actually were able to push sales of the book in advance of the actual visit, we are actually able to have the teacher read it to the students inside the classroom. Our sales for that would probably be significantly higher, if not double, what we would normally get. I don't know how you all feel about that, but the timing is everything. It's so much better for us when we actually, that's why for us, I think a lot of backlist author opportunities are much bigger for us. And I would love to know how you all feel about backlist events versus front list events.
Hi, it's Ronnie from Harper. We love backlist, but we find a lot that the authors don't tell us that they have reached out to you to schedule events, and then you try to order books and we're waiting on a reprint. So I think we love it. We just would love, we tell our authors to tell us, but we would also love if bookstores tell us, even if you're not at the ordering point yet, if it's just they've reached out, we're going to do this in 2 months, whatever, 6 weeks. It has come up a lot lately, which is really unfortunate for all of us. And I think that's with, we just want to keep the lines of communication open because we love that the authors are out there talking to you directly and getting those events set up, and we want to be supporting them as much as we can.
Yes.
I mean, we love backlist events because we're a small publisher and we don't publish that many books every year. And so for us, our authors, they're writing a book, it could take them 2 years, but in the meantime, they need to make some money. So for example, we sell the Nocturnals by Tracy Hecht. We just had a World Environment Day event in New Jersey. Last week was World Environment Day, June 5th. And we did sort of what you were talking about. She read the book, there was a station to make cute animal mask crafts, there was there was a place where they could do coloring pages. This particular librarian is super connected with her schools, so they raised money to have some animal guy come in so they could all pet, so it was a very cute event. But honestly, I had a hard time getting a bookseller, so I had them buy direct from us. Which is, again, like you guys, I don't want to do the QR code. I don't want to do all of that. But my point is that there were over 55 families that showed up at this event. We sold a couple hundred books, and so it was really good. But for us, it's really hard to find the right bookstore, as I've mentioned before. But for publishers, small, if you want to find me, there's the indie event tonight from 9 to 11. I'm happy to talk about how we did that event and how we've done other events like that don't have, you just make up a day. Hey, it's, Animal Day or whatever. There's a million days you could make up, and you could sell backlist, and we all make more money on it. not a big house, but small houses, and we have to make sure Ingram has it in stock, all of that. So, if I can work with the wholesaler to make sure they have our books, and Simon & Schuster, who distributes us, But I think there's a lot of opportunity, and I would love to be a part of that, because I really think like we could all help each other.
I think it's interesting to be able to have that dialogue, like you're talking about, where particularly if you're from a small press, the idea of being able to already have successful events that you've had, to be able to bring to the store that may not have the bandwidth, like maybe there's 2 people working the store. They don't have the time to be able to do that, but if you're coming with a pre-prepared event, that might be very helpful to smaller stores like that could end up being really successful. I also think it's really important to think outside the box because, for instance, we're doing an event with Barney Salzberg in September, and it's a new book of poetry for him, which is really, really great. And I know that if I had Barney there, it'll be a nice event, it'll be great. But I decided to switch it up, and I'm going to combine our poetry slams. We do poetry slams with kids from 7 to 14, and they come in and they write their poems. They can do any kind of spitting words that they want to be able to do. And so we're doing a pet-themed, because Barney's poems are about a wet dog, the glory of a wet dog. We're doing a pet-themed poetry slam. So I know that I'm going to have 10 to 12 kids there reading their poems. Barney's going to be there to be their judge and mentor and for their poetry and talk about read his own poems. All the parents and family are going to be there. And that's a really exciting way to be able to, do you guys have other types of ways of being able to do something different with your events?
So I think for us too I think traditionally for events, it's 1 ticket, 1 person. And so what we've done is added a family ticket of up to 4 to 6 people, and it allows for access. So if a family of 4 can't afford 4 $25 tickets, we can, have either families come together or have more opportunity for multi-generational events. We did this for an author, and we were able to have 500 people at the event. We had schools who were able to bring their students. We had 2 schools drive an hour to come to the event, and we sold more books. So just thinking a little bit outside the box of how do we normally do things and what are we flexible with? And being able to communicate that with you guys of like, hey, it might not be 1 person per ticket, but we'll be able to get more people if we're able to make it more accessible.
We're a children's only bookstore. We have a tiny little adult section. When we do ticketed events, it's a book that comes with a ticket. The price of the ticket is the book. It is not practical or really possible at all for us to do 1 ticket per person when you have a parent bringing their child. Is the parent going to bring home, their Andy Griffith's copy as well? And so we typically do either like Lupe, like a family ticket, or at the very minimum a 2 for 1. So 2 people, one ticket, and 1 book. And we also find that actually increases the amount of people in somebody's family that comes to the event, and then they purchase more books, especially if it's like a series, they purchase more books almost always.
We also do a lot of community partnerships. So there's an amazing nonprofit based out of Chicago that we partner with to do a festival every year. And at that fest, not only are children getting to meet amazing authors, but they're also getting free eye exams. They're getting informed on like different like free tutoring, things like that, access to all of that as well. So having those community spaces as well has been amazing, and we're able to bring these great authors, like I think last year the lineup was like Jason Reynolds, Jerry Craft, Eve Ewing, for free. And the space was just welcome to anyone who wanted to come out, and it was an all-day thing, and doing something like that is also really awesome.
Discoverability and representation. So we just wanted to talk about, we have a call to action to support our diverse communities for every place that we actually work in. And there are different issues that are through here. We can start with the celebrity author, pros and cons. I know we all have different feelings for it. I am from Los Angeles, the most jaded community ever for any type of celebrity school visit. They're not going to be successful. Don't even bother to offer them. So I can promise you they don't care. They just don't care. No, I mean, if it's great. I understand that's the way you talk about eyes bigger than the stomach. The celebrities are going to be your first one where they want like a big, gigantic push, and there's a big push for all of those types of books. But for us, that's not necessarily the successful thing. We have a nonprofit, Readers and Writers Rock. Our entire goal is to be able to get authors who look and speak like the kids that we take them to into the classroom. We just had an amazing one on May 29th with Isabel Allende for her very first picture book. We took her to Marvin Elementary, and I was able to convince my friend Meg Medina to come back and do the conversation with Isabel. I don't think it was hard for Meg, because that's like, I think Isabel is one of her heroes, like she is one of mine. And it was just to talk about the experience. Isabel, I don't want to speak for her, but I could sense that she was nervous. She'd never done an event with kids at all. This was the only school visit that she was actually doing, and this was her very first kids picture book. She's in her 80s. This was just a completely new experience for her, though she's done lots and lots of school visits. And she was so nervous about it. She didn't want to pass out the books at the end. She was, I could really see that. The moment the kids came in, and it was almost 85-90% Latino, I could just see it just start to happen to her. And then the kids started to speak with her in Spanish, or a mixture of Spanish and English. And everything just began to change. And she was still so direct in talking. She really wanted to talk about bullying, which is a major part of this book that she wrote. And when she began to communicate with the kids, and they began to talk about their own experiences of being bullied within the classroom, and you get that thing where kids repeat the same thing over and over and over again to each kid, which was really great. But then all of a sudden there would be something like one young girl who just said that how hard it was to deal with people you think are friends hurting you, emotionally. And then the principal glowing when a little kid stood up and recited the mantra that they actually have about bullying, that they try to instill in every single kid. And they were like, you just thought the principal was beaming, like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I say this because I really love when publishers support these type of events. And I'm going to shout out one publisher just because they have been over the top supportive of those kind of events, and that's Candlewick. Candlewick, when they have stock of a particular book, they know from past experiences this is what we do. They're like, I've got these books, do you want them to be able to utilize for a giveaway? I'm like, yes. Oh my God, that's amazing. I don't know if you had that experience with certain publishers, but if you are sitting on things that, everything that we can utilize it for our ability to be able to take authors to these types of schools. Yes, sir.
Brand, for events like that, are those always new books?
No. In fact, that's exactly the thing, is that it doesn't need to be a new book at all. If you've got a title that is, and it's sitting in a warehouse, but it's an active author who's around, I mean, yeah, we'll use that, particularly if it's an author of color, or an author that speaks to a specific community that we deal with within our own communities. Absolutely, it definitely does not have to be that.
Yeah, I think for us, like I mentioned, we're a nonprofit, so we do serve all the schools, but right now in our area, we're just focusing on the campaign for grade level reading, and a lot of those underserved populations. It would be really great to be able to bring more authors that look like them, that had similar stories, that sound like them. It's just, if you think about the first book you connected with that made you feel seen, and those are the moments that we're creating, and it's a lot easier when we have the authors that are creating these stories in front of them. And even the kids who are not readers, that don't, devour every book in front of them, they're gonna connect with that. And they might forget the title, they might forget the author, they might forget the book, but they won't forget how they felt. And so those are the moments that we're trying to create, and really impact is our biggest focus. What is the impact? Yes, sales are important and all those things, but what is the impact of the visit, of the event in the community, in the school, in the students' lives?
Also, real quick, as a pitch for, I am 28 years old. A lot of these YA authors that are coming, that have been in the works, I'm so excited to meet them in real life because they're the ones who had a big impact and are the reason that I'm here today, you know? And also a pitch for bookstore events for some of these bigger authors, children's authors, because some of the best events that I've had have been over 100 adults my age that are really excited to just finally meet their heroes. So don't only do school visits, please. Also do store events so that I can purchase my ticket to get my book signed as well.
Again, I think all of you guys mentioned stuff that BBGB is either completely aligned with in terms of the school network that we work with, like I said, is across the range. Richmond is the schools are 100% reflective of how the city is distributed. It's very apparent when you go there. And so being able to offer to our school network just something for everyone, something for all sort of grade levels. And so YA is not really an area that we have tapped into as much, but we have been getting more and more asks actually from upper middle school educators and teachers, sort of trying to fill the void of there being a kind of lack of upper middle grade representation, not just in authors that are touring, but books that are being written for that demographic.
I would love to really, YA is very difficult for us. We've tried it, but our students, they're doing so much in the high school level that it's really difficult to find time to be able to actually squeeze in an author event at a school in that way. But I think that there's so many kids that are on TikTok and other places where they're doing like the talking up books and other things like that, that you might be able to do YA events that are on a much smaller scale, targeted teams who are active on TikTok, where an author comes and speaks with them about their book. You give them really great freebies, and then you have this promotional opportunity where they're all out there promoting the book and the experience with the author. That, to me, could be so much more successful than the traditional type of event that you're doing with school visit. So I think there's ways of being able to explore it. One of the things that I wanted to talk about real quick is the regional author and tour schedule, and not the regional, but author and tour schedules in general. So one thing that has changed post-COVID is that frequently publishers are flying in the author in the morning, they're doing a visit, and then they're doing another visit, and then they're flying back out that day. They're not even spending the night to be able to relax, and it's really stressful for the authors. I know that, already, but also you have scheduled two schools completely separate from each other. Maybe it's like, or an event at a store over here, and then a school visit that is probably an hour and a half away, and then the airport that's another hour and a half away from that, because we didn't take the time to be able to Google map it and actually see what the actual timing it would take to be able to get to all of these places. And it can't really be the store's expectation to be able to provide all of that information. So it is really important that you do your homework so that you know exactly if they're even going to be able to make some of the dates that they're. How do you guys feel about that?
I think it's a lot about communication too. And every store is different. I only work with schools, so I do have the ability to do all that on my end. Every store does not have that. So I think just communication and transparency is the common thread, I think.
So we also, I think, handle the coordination piece a little differently. We pull a lot of weight as it relates to creating the itinerary and planning ahead of time, and considering the distance between schools when we're looking at a day. And so I'll ask a publicist, tell me what time this author is landing. I'll account for them having to go to the hotel and get ready. or if they need to just go straight from the airport to the school, and then when is, their Uber coming to pick them up and where. And so, but that works because, we have such a dedicated department to handle that piece. So, that's what we do.
And from our end, I have a strategy. So like I have all the schools that are interested in working with us. And I know here's the author that's coming, here's who would be beneficial to go to, here's who's able to do it without putting a burden on the school, or searching them. Then there are the schools that I can go to tomorrow and say, hey, can you host an author? But we also try to give them as much as possible. We try to work 2 months ahead because the schools have, the librarians who help us do the school visits don't always have all the information of what's going on in the school, and they have to go to their administration to get it approved and all that. So there's too many moving factors for us to either work last minute or to not have all that information available.
Also, increase ask for authors who are within our area. Instead of flying authors in, someone who can drive to our store who's within the community. That also results in a really, really great turnout for us. When we've done events in store for debut, whether they're debut YA, which I know not everyone loves and it doesn't do well for others, but debut YA, debut like early reader books, those have been some of our most successful events because families coming, friends are coming, school connections are coming, and I'm selling 125 copies of a book at the store for a book that maybe if they were flying across the country, maybe 15, maybe 25, So also, if there's a way where on Edelweiss we could also see regional authors that are willing to tour and willing to visit, that would be a really great tool.
Yeah. Very helpful. So one thing for me is about the dates in the year where all the books come out. We know when they are. Beginning of September, beginning of March, beginning of May. Those dates you're putting out, every publisher is putting out 4 great titles for authors. So there's a limited amount of time that we can actually do school visits. And so one of the things that is really important for us is flexibility. So if we are able to schedule an author from one publisher on the Saturday after the Tuesday that it came out, if you have flexibility to allow us to have an early start for a book that you want us to do an event with, and we can have it the Saturday before the book comes out, we will report those sales for the first week. But we have to have that flexibility. Some of you are great with it, and some of you are horrible with it. You have absolutely no flexibility whatsoever. And it's just not helpful because we can't really be able to do an event with you because there's not that ability. But if we can have that event beforehand, we're going to have a really great event for you. And also people feel really lucky because they're getting the book early, and that whole idea. And we still report the numbers the proper way that they should be reported. I don't know if any of you have feelings about that, where it works successfully for you or it doesn't work successfully for you. If you don't, that's okay too. It comes up a lot, though. Does that come up for any of you?
Yeah, and Brent, just to ask, early release has been sometimes, yes, it's absolutely no problem, and then sometimes it is a no-go, and then that affects when you're able to schedule events. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that is exactly it. I mean, for us, Saturday events work really, really well.
Yeah.
Weekday events are not the best. We're not an evening store, so we don't do evening events. I'm sure some of you do evening events, but we don't, so. Does anyone have any questions about anything regarding anything that we've gone through today? Or hope? What are your hopes for events for your organizations? Yes, sir.
I wanted to ask, you mentioned that you do work with the Foundation for Grade Level Reading.
So in our community right now, we're starting to bring in the community partners for that. I think the closest school system that's worked on that is Charlotte-Mecklenburg in our area. So we're kind of taking that model and looking at who are the key stakeholders, who are the people that can really take this on. And so we're starting those conversations there, including Bookmarks, the school system, and some other nonprofits in the area. But all of it coming from, our school system has a plan of 90% of the kids will be on 90% of third graders will be reading on grade level by 2025. They are going into second grade and it's not looking good. So we're just trying to be more aggressive and knowing that we're a part of that conversation. We're in the schools, we're donating books. We just did 16 free book fairs last week. The last week of school, 20,000 books went out. So like just doing all these things as a collective, we can do more together, and pairing those things with author events, author visits, book fairs, or whatever it is, and just trying to make an impact in the community.
And how are you generating reading lists for those books?
So it's a collaborative effort. We always come up with a list: diverse, new, inclusive, popular, and then the school system, because it is, we were going into the schools, they kind of helped with it. They either added titles. We didn't really take anything away, and just making sure that depending on where the schools were, might look a little bit different. Some of them might get more of one title than others. So it was a huge undertaking, but it was a lot of collaboration.
Yes.
Sorry, when you said you just did 20 free book fairs,
16.
Right? 16. I apologize. Who's helped funding this?
So we're a nonprofit, so we have a budget that comes either from donors, grants, also the school system put in some money, and then private donors in the community. We are very supported by our community, and so a lot of it comes from that, and also conversations that are above my pay grade, like, we're not making any money on those, so charging at cost or whatever it is that we're doing on that end, but a lot of it was just trying to make an impact. So these kids went home with 3 books for the summer. And then also, not ending there, but the school system and other partners are gonna do like pop-up events in the community over the summer just to continue that and preventing that summer slide. And because we're a nonprofit, we also have an army of volunteers that volunteer their time. So we don't have a warehouse, we have a small bookstore and then some offices, so we sorted all the books, we boxed them up, we delivered them, we set up the book fairs, we were there helping the schools. So it was just something that we all thought it was important, so we took all resources and put it together.
Going back to the previous questions about like reading levels, do you guys, or are you seeing schools factor in like Lexile levels and guided reading levels? Are you dealing with that at all? Is it something, we see it a lot on the library side as publishers, and I'm with IPG, the distributor, so we work a ton on both sides. It's a huge thing in library buying. Does it factor in for school visits for you guys?
I am not super familiar with Lexile levels. I will say that overall, schools and libraries are absolutely looking for at least 1 year, in terms of school visits and reading levels, they are going 1 year younger for a grade level. So like a 4th grader, especially a 4th grader this coming fall, they would look at that kid at about like a mid to 3rd grade reading level. That is not just because this is the brand new school year. They haven't really entered 4th grade yet, but that's also because of the pandemic slide. And so generally, when scheduling school visits, we are finding that a lot of the middle grade, like 8 to 12 titles, are actually becoming less and less picked up by a lot of our schools, and they're looking for that like 5 to 8 reading level for even some of their, like 3rd and 4th graders.
And for us, we always say we don't teach people to read. I don't know the science of reading. We just use it as a collaboration. Here's what the publisher suggests. You know your kids best. We took a picture book and we say this is suggested for kindergarten to second, but we saw third graders. So just really partnering with the school and letting them make that decision of what kids are appropriate for that book, because it's going to be different everywhere.
And those numbers are so arbitrary. I mean, half of the time they're based off of new words. So Diary of a Wimpy Kid or Dogman are going to be higher because they're using all of these nonsense words. And this is a fact. That's just nothing like, I mean, that's just the way that it is. And so parents, though, will get stuck into the number idea. And it's really hard to be able to get them to break free from that in that situation. I did want to say one thing about all of this, which is, if you're dealing, I mean, I don't know how everybody feels about this, but I'm okay with it from my perspective. If you've got a store that you're doing an event with, and you feel that they're maybe it's a new store even, they're not sure about the process, I have no issue with speaking with somebody about how we can help them. I don't mind people stealing the forms that we already use, looking at our website to see how we do it. I will support them in any way I possibly can. So, and it doesn't take that long. So, if you feel like there's a store that maybe just be struggling because they just don't know it yet, you can use us as a contact and a resource. I don't know how everyone else feels about that, but yeah, that's what I'm happy to support other stores. And I want stores in places that are not Los Angeles or Chicago or to actually be able to be successful so that there's more of them.
Yes. Hi. You guys have talked a lot about during the year and like school visits, but what has been most successful for you over the summer? Because we do still have books that publish and that are new, and some are debuts and some are backlist authors that we try to tour in the summer but really can't. And I'm just wondering what has been most successful, what you want to see more of in your bookstores.
It's really hard. So I'm trying. We used to not do events at all, because everybody's at camp or doing, they're away at different times. We're doing a middle grade readers club that is not like coming together to meet inside the store. It's actually just purchase these books. You're going to have a chance to meet the author at the events, and we're doing a conversation with Rex Ogle and Max Brallier for their 2 graphic novels. We're doing a poetry slam that's related to another book that we're doing separate from the Barney one. We're having a picture book with Chelsea Lynn Wallace where it's a teacher invite just before school starts up for them in the beginning of August, where they can all come and we're just going to help them look at new books. So things that are outside the norm, they may not be student related. It may be parent related, it may be a day for teachers, just whatever you can come up with out of the box. And then we manage expectations with the author to let them know, just don't plan on this being like the biggest thing in the world. How about you guys? Anyone?
Yeah, our summer season, we're also located on a college campus, so we are slow during the summer. So this is like our breaks from events as well. So, I mean, unless you have someone really exciting coming by, then like maybe, but yeah, it's a hard time.
I would say definitely targeting the parents during the dog days when they have the vacations are either a month away or they already went on them. That is what we try and do. So July, we have toddler book clubs, which is a picture book that we read. Well, the adults read them, the toddlers kind of do their own thing. And then a craft that follows. And then for middle grade, I would say they're being creative and going outside the box. We're participating in this Who Was mobile fan experience. So it's all about the Who HQ books, and it's just completely history and trivia. There's no sit down. It's just these, middle grade sort of readers coming in and getting to kind of show off their trivia skills.
They don't always have to be a traditional book signing like that, particularly during the summer. So we've had Morel Ortega, and she's selling and signing her books, but she actually comes in as an illustrator. She does all sorts of special crafts with the kids who come in, and we get a lot of adults too, and she'll do a craft hour with them. So we're using the authors, we're just using them in a different way. Or we'll have an author who writes novels in verse to actually come in, and the whole session is them just working with kids to write a story with a big pad and coming up with a story and how to be able to do that. That's great. The authors actually love it. We may not sell that many books right away. We might sell a few then, but there's something else that's going on there. They're having like this really incredible experience with that author and with that book, and they're going to come back and talk about that. So those types of events are really, really great.
So for us, we do slow down in the summer, but we still work with the schools over the summer. So there's summer school for the schools that are trying to get kids that didn't pass their end of grade reading, trying to get them on grade level. So we'll do school visits for them. But they're limited, so the schedule we have to know ahead of time. We work with something called Freedom Schools. Again, they're trying to get these kids on grade level. We do have a story time once a month. And then we started doing field trips to bookmarks where we invite groups from underserved population for the kids to shop for books. So they get free books, and we try to add either a story time or author meet and greet when they can. I'd love to do more of that. I have about 4 field trips in the summer. And then going into the fall, before fall, we try to do an educator event or educator night.
Hi.
Yes.
I just wanted to go back to the working together and collaborating. Indie bookstores aren't in competition with each other. And so I think it would be great if publicists and publishers, when putting on touring authors, to connect the bookstores to each other. My event manager reaches out to other bookstores, and then you can collaborate and on social media and marketing and, hey, what's working? Or, oh, I have only 12 people coming. What do you have? Just to be able to understand the landscape and share, I think would be great.
So we're in our last few minutes. I just wanted to yes, go ahead. You had a question?
Oh, so speaking of summer events, I just had the idea of maybe Candlewick possibly, adding author events to Find Waldo Local, so that you're running Find Waldo Local in your stores, but maybe we could bring authors into stores at that time because you're having the kids, at the Find Waldo Local events. But my other question was about timing and scheduling. No, my other question is, would you ever be open to, and would you like authors to come to book fairs, to do signings at book fairs? And will that raise the numbers?
I think any kind of thing to enhance the experience, that would be amazing. We've had book fairs where the librarians ask, do you have an author that can come and either before, during, after, to generate, well, maybe not after, but to generate excitement for this event, and an author event would be amazing.
So you think that having an author actually at the book fair itself would help sales of that title tremendously?
I think it would.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
Final question.
Yeah.
I just had a random thought. Thinking of summertime, it might also be a great opportunity for publishers to go outside of their usual boxes. I own a bookstore in Lido, Newport Beach, which is, summertime is one of our craziest times because it's in a tourist location. And so for the individuals who are like, okay, summer's a little slow, try on a different bookstore it's the heights of their market, right? It's the tourisms. And we do reading camp, we do writing camp all throughout the summer. We have middle juvenile book clubs, we have story times. So it could be a fun opportunity to also create new partnerships and try on somebody new in their height of the season.
We talked about having regional information on Edelweiss, but I will say this to everybody. You manifest what you want. I cold call publishers all the time. I already set things up with the author in advance, and I know it's probably irritating to a lot of people, but I don't care. I want to have this happen. I'm going to make it happen. And so a lot of times that's what you have to do. You just have to, if you know it, figure out who you want, go to them. Maybe go to the author first, then go to the publisher and fit them in. Never do it without fitting them in somewhere. but you can actually make it. You don't have to wait for the grids to be able to figure out what you're going to be doing for events. And you had a question.
Yeah, I represent Usborne, which is mostly young children's books. All the authors are either in-house in Usborne in London or from the UK, and they're not going to come over here, but they do a ton of assets. They could have a really killer non-author event, and how do those fit in to what you have, and how can we give you what we have and let you know, we're happy to partner with you.
So, and this kind of goes back to one of our asks, which was even a generic 30-second reel that the author creates for booksellers to be able to share with their audience. But what we find is, and please let me know if you guys feel the same way, what we find is anything that the author can offer for people to attend an event, whether that is, like recently we had Alison Gerber offer like a free 30-minute Q&A, and this was a raffle. It wasn't a free 30-minute Q&A for everyone who attended. People who attended were automatically entered into a raffle to win that one-on-one time with her, or if they had a classroom, then that virtual classroom time with her. And we find that having those personal incentives that in virtual, that are completely opened up with this virtual space that we have, draws people in and makes them feel even more connected, despite being either across the pond or just not in the same area.
Thank you all so much for an incredible, I think it was a good discussion, and I hope you all feel hopeful.
Thank you for listening to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. Additional educational resources can always be found on the ABA website at www.bookweb.org. Happy reading!